if you're coming from something like a big outboard powered day boat or a sports cruiser, this is going to feel familiar, but it's also going to be a step up. This is an ultra manageable size for many of you guys to step up into from something like an outboard powered day boat, a large one, or a sports cruiser. Reason being, the weight of this vessel is enough that she doesn't get overtaken by the wind as much, and the windage, because she's not a flybridge vessel, is less. So if you're coming from something like a big outboard powered day boat or a sports cruiser, this is going to feel familiar, but it's also going to be a step up, if that makes sense. But rather than talking about that, let's just show you. So we're going to go into the ocean, we're going to do some maneuvering, come along for the ride and see what you learn. So we're currently surrounded by dolphins, guys. I'm not sure if this is going to pick up in the camera or not. I'll try and cut to some drone shots just for the pure pleasure of it. I've dead set counted about 10 in the last few seconds. Anyway, we're not here to see dolphins, so we're just going to accelerate the boat from a standing, almost standing still, and I'm going to get her up to plane. We're going down swell right now. We're obviously in the ocean, and big rolling, long period swells. And so it's going to be a nice little test. We'll just get the boat moving straight up through 10 knots, 2,000 revs, seeing 15 knots, 19 knots. You do see a little bit of spray being deflected by the flare when you're rolling through 19 knots. I'm at 23 now, and speed increasing, 2,500 revs. So we've got the IPS 800s, that means 600 horsepower each. Nice level acceleration like you expect on a lot of Rivieras. Feels like sweet spot starts from 23 knots and above, and right now I'm at 24 knots, burning 150 litres total. That's 6.3 litres per nautical mile, and we're just going down swell. We're going down swell. We're going to put those swells on our starboard beam in a second, but I'm just going to bring the boat up to a 27 knot cruise speed as we roll through a couple of waves. So this hull of the other Riviera hulls that I have driven has got a bit of a flare up the bow, and I think they've done that because the hydrodynamically, to get all the accommodation in this, what's around about a little bit over 50 feet overall, 52 feet I think she is, you're probably going to have a flatter sides from the V, so higher sides, if that makes sense, which is going to throw a bit of water up. So we have the flare, and I'm watching the flare do its job, but I suspect in some conditions you're going to get a little bit of water up on the windscreen, so just drive to the conditions. Watch your speed. 27 knots feels good. The bow's out of the water, she's cutting nicely. I see 170 litres total on the dial, and I've got a 6.7 litre nautical mile at that. And yeah, my speed's ranging as I go up and down these waves from 25 to 27 knots. Okay, clear all around, got one boat, port aft quarter. I'm just going to do a turn to the north. I got my seat all the way forward. You've got plenty of adjustment on this one. This is the manual seat. We don't have electric operation like you've seen me on some of the other rivs, but it's incredibly comfortable. As I note on every Riviera, these boats are designed to go places. They're designed for you to do this in the ocean, eat up miles, and I do believe this particular model could make a great day boat for some of you. That's why I was sort of leaning to that in the intro, because quite a few of you have been writing to me about that actually, comparing this model with other European style day boats. So I find that quite fascinating. So there we go, we've got the beam, the swell on the starboard beam right now. That's dry, that's comfortable. A little bit of bow raise at 25 knots. I'll just give it some more. I'm going into the wind there. Okay, that lowers the bow. I've got the trim assist on auto. I can obviously override that if I choose. And now I'm going to maintain this speed, hovering at around 27, and we'll just go straight into the swells. Okay, clear all around. And rolling swells, nobody's in my way, that's good. We are watching out for whales as well. I have seen some whales this week and last week, but dolphins seem to be the most active. Not too much heel in the turns. We do not have fin or gyro stabilization on this boat, so it's just inherent stability. And let's go into these waves. Here's our first one, up and over. Okay, let's go for a few more. Hitting that at 26.5 knots, and I don't feel the necessity to slow down. Center of gravity feels great. I don't even feel like the need to have my hand on the throttle. I'm always ready, but this feels comfortable. Long period waves. Here's another one at 20. Let's speed it up. Let's speed it up. I feel like we can. Okay, so I've gone from 80% engine load to 95% engine load there, and I'm seeing 207 litres total consumption on the dial, 7.2 litres per nautical mile. Comfortable, comfortable. She does send the spray further forward on this boat, but the flare, it is sending it out. So I'm not seeing it on the windscreen. I'm not seeing it on the windscreen. That flare is doing its job. And I do believe that's because the inherent compromises you have on a smaller boat. If you want to get this accommodation in, you got to push the hull out a little bit. So they've had to be creative with the design. I think it's quite good looking. So 29 knots into the swells, super comfortable. I'm now going to head north again, dial back the speed to something sensible. I don't drive around at 95% all day. I drive 75%, 80%. Seems more logical. So I've come back to 85% right now, and I'll dial that off in a second. Beautiful, comfortable, predictable, no stabilization. This is great. This is great. You can feel a certain hum of the hull once she gets up to about that 23 knot speed. As I said, she sort of feels like she's in her element. So there we go, sitting on 23 there, 165 litres total consumption, 23.5, that's 77% engine load and 7.1 litres per nautical mile. And now let's dial the speed back a little bit, see how she behaves. I can see that wash going further forward, so the V section's digging in. This might be more comfortable if I'm going into some short, sharp chop, because she does have a decent amount of V forward. This is when I suspect the boat might get a little bit wet if you were running into, say, a nor'easter with standing waves. And so you just, obviously, that's why you have all this weather protection and windscreen wipers that you can operate from right here, which is not the case, which you need to think about on many day boats that you're probably also considering. Many of them are going to be open. That's when you are going to get wet. Okay, so now let's slow that down. 19 knots. I'm seeing 115 litres total consumption, 6.2 per nautical mile. All clear for wildlife. Definitely got wash coming forward. It is being separated from the boat by the flare, so that's okay. And then let's dial it back. I suspect anywhere from that 19 to 12 knot speed range doesn't feel efficient. So I would dial it back to 12. That feels good. We've got a real level attitude there. 70 litres per nautical mile. You're not going to do that inshore next to people on anchorage because you are making a pretty big wave at that speed. So then let's come back to 10 knots. And my total consumption is dropping down around 50 litres per hour now. I'm just sitting on about 10. I've got the windows and the doors closed for this entire drive, so this is the noise levels. No need to raise your voice. You could sit all the way around this cabin. It's going to be quite pleasant. Anyone out on the alfresco deck, it's going to be obviously a more noisy experience because the engines are also back in that location. But in here, in the saloon and cockpit area, it's or the helm, it's delightful. Let's just try a little bit slower. 9 knots. Some of you sailors, I don't think any of you powerboat guys are going to do this. Look at that. Well, look at the consumption. 25 litres total per hour at 8.5 knots, giving us 3 litres per nautical mile. So you really can plod along and rip up some miles if that's necessary, because what have we got? You've got 2,500 litres total capacity on this boat, so do the numbers. And if you're interested in how they construct the fuel tanks on this boat, watch my factory tour video. I learnt quite a lot. You might find that interesting if you're a buyer, because they go to the extra mile. They go the extra mile when they're putting these things together, and it was pretty evident. All right, coming right back off the plane. So really, at 6 knots, 7 knots, you're only going to be doing this in social inshore mode. I doubt you're going to be doing this offshore unless you're a fisherman. And we are seeing 10 litres total consumption at 6.5 knots, 1.6 litres per nautical mile, and the revs are just sitting on 830 revs at that speed. Very interesting. Let's go drop the anchor. Okay guys, so we've just pressed DPS again, found our anchorage. I'm just going to run forward and release the claw. Obviously this is something you can do by yourself on a designer boat like this. You might want to have that window open just to communicate if that's important to you, depending on who is on board and who's useful. And then let's just release this. Never go to sea with this, or never go fast without the claw on. There we go. Now, one of the great things about the bow roller and the anchor setup on these ribs is that it has been designed in such a way that the anchor will always stow in the bow roller in the correct position. So that makes life a lot easier for you. Okay, from a standing start, we're just going to bring the revs right up. We have the tide with us and it's ripping, and we'll just bring you along for the ride. Okay, acceleration 1700 revs, 1900 revs, 2000 revs, bow raise. I'm at 190 litres consumption fuel. I'm already at 25 knots and climbing. I see 27 knots and climbing. Oh, that's 100% load now. I got 238 litres on the dial, fuel consumption, and I'm at 33 knots and climbing. 33 and a half knots and climbing. We're going with the tide for this part of the test. 35 knots. Okay, 7.1 litres per nautical mile, 244 litres total consumption, and 35 knots. And actually, we saw 36 knots before when we were flying the drone, because the tide was running a little bit faster than it is right now. So there you go. I'm going to turn around now. We're going to get the same test going in the other direction, and we'll see how she behaves. Just going to find some water up here to do a safe turn without pissing off too many people. Okay, rolling start this time. Into the tide. Tide going through our waves in 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Seeing 28 knots and climbing. I'm at 100% load already. I'm entering the strong part of the tide. That's giving me a depth warning. No, I'm at 7 metres. I'm all good. I'm in the channel. Okay, 100% load, 7.9 litres per nautical mile. I've got 240 litres total consumption, and I'm seeing 31 knots. Now 31, just hit 32 into the tide. Okay, let's dial it back. And just sitting on that 75% load into the tide, we see an easy 27.2 knots. Awesome. So what do you reckon, guys? Is this a vessel that you consider to be as manageable, and is it offering you perhaps a little bit more than that big luxury day boat that you've probably seen on my channel? And I know many of you are considering this versus those. So I hope that gave you an insight into the management of a vessel of this style, if it's the first time you're considering buying one of these. Now, if you have some more questions, if you want to get a little bit more detailed, as many of you seem to be doing, a lot of you are writing to me wanting to compare one boat with another or ask specific questions. I may have the answers or I may not, but I can generally find the person who does. So do that in the Patreon. Don't do it by DMing me, do it in the Patreon. That's where I'll be able to get you the answers. And I'm going to pop up some competition on the screen right now for you to do your own research, because that's what this channel is all about. There's no such thing as a perfect boat. They're all different, and it really depends on what your mission is as to what suits you. That's the whole idea about all this. I reckon this is an absolute winner for Australian, New Zealand, American, and other environments. I see Asia being a real suitable climate for this, but you make up your own mind. My name's Dan Jones. You've been watching Dan's Boat Life. Thank you. Subscribe, share it with your mates, and thank you for saying hello. So many of you have been saying g'day at all the boat shows I've been visiting around the world. I do appreciate it. See you on the next one. Bye.